A brief note before we get started with Baseball Biz on Deck today. We were actually holding this in a different studio than where we normally are. And if it sounds a little bit like a kitchen, that may be the case. So it should be a lot of fun. Got to speak with Tim Neverett, announcer for the Dodgers. And let's get started. Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. I am Mark Carpenter, your host, and with me today I have Mr. Tim Neverett, the announcer for the Dodgers. Hey, Tim, how you doing today, man?
Great, Mark. Great. Good to see you again.
Brother, I got to tell you, it's great speaking with you. I was going back and listening again to our interview last time with, you being the author of COVID Curveball, and that was some exciting times. I didn't know what veil would ever pass and we'd be able to see life as normal again. And this season looks like it might be it.
Yeah, I think so. I'm hoping that it's a normal season again in terms of winning. I would suspect that would be the case again. But this whole, the COVID thing, that's behind us, fortunately. We're back to practically normal now, and have been for a couple of seasons. So really, with what the Dodgers did in the offseason and what they're doing heading into spring training here, that's the story everybody's really focusing in on. I know I am, and there's some new names on the roster, some new guys that we'll see in a lot of these spring training games that we won't see in the big leagues. So a lot of work to do.
Wow. I mean, you got another book this season as far as I'm concerned. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing all the changes that have happened with the Dodgers, the commitment to a new season, but the history of year after year after year, you guys right at 100 plus wins per season. I mean, a couple of them are 90 plus, but my gosh, your team and fans have to be enthusiastic about it. Some of the numbers I was looking at, Tim, you can correct me if you know otherwise, is around, as far as attendance, average around 47,000 a game.
Well, the Dodgers lead the world in attendance, right? I mean, in everything, whether it's Premier League soccer, whether it's, whatever. When you look at it at the end of the year, the Dodgers lead the world in attendance. And that's not hyperbole. That's not even an exaggeration. They just do. This year, I mean, we'll be looking at over 3 million again this year, maybe 4 million fans. I know that with the addition of Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Tyler Glasnow, that's going to help the club in a lot of different ways, adding to the players that we've already got that are superstars, like Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. I mean, you got Mookie Betts on your team. It's hard to find somebody who can overshadow him, but the Dodgers went out and did that with signing Ohtani, and Ohtani's only going to hit this year. He is going to work on throwing. He's getting on a throwing program following Tommy John surgery, but he's going to focus on being the DH only. He's coming off a year where he was the American League MVP. So you got guys. If you look at the top three guys, the three superstars at the top of the order, you got Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani. I think there's 4 MVP awards between the three guys or among the three guys. So it's a pretty talented lineup. And when I get down to Arizona, it's going to be, I'm going to have to go a little earlier to find a place to park close enough to the ballpark, because there's going to be a lot of interest, especially from the media, both domestically and internationally, that are going to show up on day one.
Pitchers and catchers report, man, it's just around the corner. I mean, what, less than 2 weeks, 3 weeks tops?
Yeah, and a lot of players go early anyway. I mean, pitchers and catchers report is an official report date, but there have been guys down there already throwing and hitting, and we've got a lot of minor leaguers who are already down there working out. I mean, that's just a date on the calendar and a date when they can start to do things in terms of the ball club, with the roster,
right?
Putting people on the 60-day injured list, and then adding people to the 40-man. You can do that the day pitchers and catchers report. So that's pretty much a day on the calendar for the Dodgers, and a lot of guys are already down there.
Yeah, the excitement has built. I know you mentioned Ohtani and who can't. My goodness, man, I said, well, I guess the thing of your show, you can say, I probably don't have to move too far since I'm still in LA. It's like, wow. The impact that he's made in the game he might as well be Taylor Swift, but
well, he is. I mean, he is. He's the Taylor Swift of baseball. I mean, there's no doubt about that. When the Dodgers had their DodgerFest the other day at Dodger Stadium, I mean, it took 7 security guards just to walk him out. And the hordes of media from all over the world to catch his every step, every word. It's like that around him. And with the Dodgers, it's going to be even more magnified than it was with the Angels. It's, that's going to be everywhere we go. It's going to be a circus. I mean, it's going to be like traveling with the Beatles, having him on the team bus and having him on the plane. It's just going to be a wild circus.
Well, before he signed with you guys, everybody and their brother thought they maybe had a chance of Ohtani coming there. Let's see, looking around, I say the Blue Jays were probably as anticipatory as anybody. And I can't imagine what it was like, because I think there's 2 or 3 days where people are saying he's coming, he's going to be here in Toronto. He's going to be here in Toronto. And I imagine that ticket office was busy. They may have a sold out season. I don't know after all that.
Well, you gotta, it was funny. I was sort of laughing at all of that stuff. I thought the Giants actually had a better chance than Toronto to get him. The whole story about there's a plane heading from Orange County to Toronto as a private plane, and the media was waiting at the Toronto airport to film whoever got off that plane, and it wasn't him. I sort of was laughing about that because I'm a believer in waiting to see what happens before it actually happens. And so there was always conversation about Ohtani. I mean, among the press, I think more than anything, speculation. Even last year, we'd go somewhere and maybe the other team's broadcaster would be having a conversation with me, and what are you going to do when you get Ohtani next year? That would be the conversation. And you just laugh it off. You're like, well, let's wait and see if it happens first. It would be great if we could have him because he's Babe Ruth. I mean, he's actually, when you look at his numbers and stuff, he's actually better than Babe Ruth was, both at pitching and hitting for average and different other metrics. So we're seeing a once in a lifetime player. And fortunately, he's wearing Dodger blue. And he said the other day at DodgerFest, he said that it really didn't sink in until he saw all the fans there. And he says now it's starting to sink in that he's a Dodger and what it means and how different it is than being an Angel.
I have seen some of the footage from DodgerFest on YouTube, and the excitement that little I can glean from those videos is huge. And looking at some of the new guys that came, you got one of my old boys here from Tampa. Well, he's actually a hometown guy, I guess, from LA. And that's Tyler Glasnow. He's happy to be home, I'm sure. But wow, you've got him. Let's see, who else is on that lineup now? Yamamoto. Oh, wow. I mean, I guess I could say wow 3 or 4 more times, Tim. Yeah. But
the interesting thing about Yamamoto first is I'm curious to see how they handle him in terms of the workload and how they handle the adjustment from the schedule that he was accustomed to in Japan. You pitch once a week in Japan.
Yeah.
So it's not every 5th day. So I don't suspect they're going to just run him out there and try to rack up a bunch of innings in April and May and June. I would suspect that they have a plan for him in terms of his load management, if you will, to steal a term from the NBA. And I would be all for it, because I think any Dodger fan would be for it, because you got to be ready in September and April and October. That's when it really counts. I mean, this is a guy who threw a no-hitter last year. I don't know if you've gone on YouTube and watched the video of his no-hit game, but I mean, he's got amazing movement on the baseball. Granted, they use a different baseball in Japan too. So again, these are adjustments. We'll have to wait and see. He's got all the talent. It's just a matter of let's see how he puts it together. And then Tyler Glasnow, I don't think he's cut his hair since I first met him. When he was first drafted by the Pittsburg Pirates, I was actually with the Pirates, and we went on a winter caravan on a bus, and he was on my bus one year, and you wouldn't recognize him now compared to what he looked like then. He was a skinny, young kid with a really short haircut. Good guy. We thought, hey, we can't wait till he gets to the big leagues. He'll be a great interview. He'll be a great quote. And he has been. And I think, he's a Santa Clarita guy. He's just from north of LA, and, he's home. This is It was his team growing up. And I do believe that it's not going to take very long for Dodger fans to really lean toward Tyler Glasnow, especially with his ability. He's been through his injuries. Hopefully he can stay healthy. And again, there's another guy the Dodgers are going to be watching. His innings load. There'll be a time during the year where he might not pitch for a couple of weeks. And it's just because they're trying to get everybody loaded up for October. They don't want what happened last year to happen again. Clayton Kershaw was pitching injured. We find that out later after he gets shoulder surgery as soon as the season ended. And he didn't look right. I mean, he didn't look right a couple starts before that. The one that he had against the Diamondbacks. Bobby Miller, first time on the biggest of big stages in the postseason. He got hit around, and hey, no disrespect to the Diamondbacks, they were hot at the right time. They got hot at the very right time, and the Dodgers cooled off, the bats cooled off, and the pitching cooled off. And there was a lot of injuries in terms of the pitching. So, I mean, we're in the bullpen before you could blink. And that was not the plan. This year, they're loaded up with talent, and they're hopeful over the long season that talent is all healthy and ready to go. And one of those guys they're really going to count on is Walker Buehler. So that's why, even though he's healthy right now, I wouldn't expect to see him at the beginning of the season. It's my feeling. I think they said something about it at DodgerFest the other day, but my guess is that Walker Buehler's not on the opening day roster, and that's fine because that's going to be part of the plan. They're going to slow play him, maybe get him ready for May 1st or May 15th, and then let him rip from there. But there's a guy you need in October. And the young pitchers too that we've got, Emmet, Sheehan, Gavin, Stone, and Michael Grove. Those guys show that they can pitch. I like Sheehan a lot. I think he's going to do well. I still think the Dodgers are going to add in the bullpen. I know they added Ryan Brazier back today. The trade of Caleb Ferguson to the Yankees, that created a spot for Brazier. There's still a lot to be done, I think, but it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
That's interesting. The trade with the Yankees, it just happened. I'll be honest, I'm not sure if I'm saying the gentleman's name right. Christian Zazueta?
Yeah, he'll be the younger of the two. And the more advanced of the two is a left-hander who we may see sometime this season. He was with the Astros. He's got major league time. But there's a possibility that he could be, a clone of Caleb Ferguson, being a left-handed guy that can get both righties and lefties out. So that's what they're hoping, out of this trade, not only to create a space for Ryan Brazier to come back. Brazier was terrific when he came up and started throwing the cutter because he hadn't thrown that pitch before. When he came over from the Red Sox, they went down to the pitching lab in Glendale, and they said, here, hold the ball this way. This is going to be a new secondary pitch for you. And his cutter was unbelievable. It really was. So he hadn't thrown it before. And that pitch might have made all the difference for Brazier. And, he's a veteran. He's been in the big games. He's been in the World Series. He knows what it's all about. And he's a guy that I think you'll want in a leverage situation. And, really happy to see the Dodgers bring Brazier back.
With the Dodgers and like a lot of teams, I always worry about postseason because this point, I'm sorry, you've already done 162 games. That body has been worn down quite a bit, and the expectations are high. And myself and others, before we actually got into postseason, said, well, the Dodgers have a bye. Yeah, but that isn't necessarily a good thing. It's like, good Lord, sit on the shelf for a week and expect to be coming back while these other guys are out there competing. What do you think about, not necessarily the Dodgers per se, but the whole idea of having to sit out while everybody else is still warming up in the postseason?
The postseason to me is so different now. It's more like the NCAA tournament. You just have to get in. And that's, you play 162. That used to have meaning. And you say, it has meaning. You can get a rest. You can reset your pitching. Everybody will be healthy. Yeah, but you're playing against your own people.
Yeah.
You have simulated games against, some of your AAA guys and some of your major league guys. And, it's not the same. You can't simulate the experience. I'm more in favor of keeping active. I mean, in terms of playing, I would like to see them maybe re-examine. And this is not because of what happened to the Dodgers last year. This is just because, we had these conversations just casually, in the booth off the air before we saw this take place, saying this is not going to be good for the teams that get the bye. Do we really want the bye? I'd rather play.
Yeah.
And if I'm a hitter, I'd rather be seeing velocity. I'd rather be seeing the opposition pitchers. I'd rather be out there that way in an uncontrolled environment as opposed to a controlled environment at Dodger Stadium where you're playing a team made up of your bench guys and minor league guys. So I'm not a big fan of that bye. The Braves, they somehow snuck out of it, but they started out really slow after the bye too. And, again, it's going to take place. I know Major League Baseball took notice big time, and they've heard a lot about it. And, at some point in time, if they're not addressing it now, they will be addressing it, but you have to address these things so far in advance and make these changes so far in advance. Maybe they're, if I'm them, I'm probably thinking, oh boy, I think we're stuck until we expand.
Yeah.
And that's coming too at some point. So we'll see. But in the meantime, whatever game's in front of you, you got to win it, no matter if you've been sitting out for 5 or 6 days or not.
Agreed. And like I said, that wasn't really speaking specifically of the Dodgers, except there they are for last year. The whole idea is that the bye, and I was talking with Matt Germain, another guy who's an analyst on the show quite often, it just says the opportunity to get cold or not to be competitive is difficult, especially if you've done 162 games and the rest of the guys are staying there. And I don't know if that contributes to some of those guys going cold too, because nobody expects to see Mookie or Freeman kind of slow down. One of the numbers I think I read was 1 out of 13. And geez, nobody anticipated that. I think there's going to be an energy with the Dodgers this year, though, that will supersede any of that. But big picture, I really wonder if we'll find, probably after expansion, if we scale back to like 152 games and maybe do something a little bit different with the postseason. I don't know. We'll see. But
I doubt we're going to shrink the games. I really do. In spite of what Anthony Rendon wants, I mean, he doesn't play a full season anyway, so I don't know why he's the poster child for that, for shortening the season. But at the same time, I'm still in favor of 162 full season. I don't want to see him shrink it. And you know who else doesn't want to see him shrink it? The owners.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you look at chopping 10 games off the schedule, that's 5 home games probably, and that's income. So I doubt it. I mean, are the players willing to take 10 games less worth of money? No. So the owners. So I don't see that as a possibility of them shrinking the season ever. I really don't. In fact, I probably see them. I mean, we've seen it lengthen, where it starts in March and the World Series finishes in November now. I mean, when we were kids, that was never the case.
No.
It was always April, like usually the second week of April. And you had scheduled doubleheaders during the course of the season, which we still have now, just kind of as a novelty. We had one last September in Colorado, which is beautiful. And then, the way it's spread out for television, it doesn't finish till the beginning of November now.
Yeah, it's amazing when you think about it. It makes me evaluate over time with a lot of these pitchers too, Tim. I'm looking at it and saying, well, we expect a lot from somebody like Clayton, Kershaw, and maybe they're reticent to say anything they're experiencing, but they bring so much to the game. And the Tommy John surgeries have just elevated to nobody's business. We got to take care of the arms. I mean, you're talking about Walker Buehler. They're not going to throw him out there and immediately do 9 innings and be in a rotation of every 5 games.
No, I think, and don't forget Dustin May too. He'll be back. He's been throwing for several weeks already. So he'll be back after his second surgery. The second surgery he had was not Tommy John, though. It was a different type. But I would suspect he'll be back. And there's a guy that need to really watch his innings.
Oh, yeah.
So, we can't forget about him. We can't forget about Blake Trinan, who was so good coming out of the bullpen. He said that it's his first fully healthy offseason he's had in a long time. He feels great. Last year, he didn't feel great when he went to pitch in AAA. It was so it just develops. I mean, I'm anxious to see these guys throwing games against live hitting pretty soon. We're going to see plenty of that coming up in the next couple of weeks. But Tony Gonsolin, we won't see him again. He's Tommy John. He won't be around this year. but to see Buehler back, I think is going to be terrific. He wanted to pitch at the end of last season. That's how good he feels. And the Dodgers were like, no. We got one more year under contract with you, so no, we're not going to wreck that or take a chance. But I'm happy to see what he can do. And then you mentioned Clayton Kershaw. We don't know what his future holds, except that because of the shoulder surgery, we don't have any kind of a start date for him, but it's going to be mid-season at the earliest. So how do you handle that? Do the Dodgers sign him? Does he sign with the Dodgers? I mean, he's going to have a choice. The Rangers are right there 30 minutes from his driveway in Texas. So, it'd be a convenient thing for him. Or does he finish his career as a Dodger? I think a lot of people would love to see him back in LA, even if it's for just the stretch run. I think if you can add an arm like that, that's going to be terrific. You could sign him at some point, put him on the 60, and then get him ready to go. And he would have his spring training in like June. And then come back in July and August and be ready for the stretch. So that's something that's I think hopeful for a lot of people around the Dodgers to see Kershaw back. Yeah. Whether he comes back still remains to be seen.
Well, I hope he does. I mean, he's entertainer as much as everything else, outside of a superb pitcher and somebody who's definitely going to have a place in history with the game. So hopefully for Dodgers fans, he stays there, but I'm sure there's a lot of Rangers fans that we wouldn't mind seeing him out here in the Texas as well. Well, let me ask you now, kind of, Tim, speak to you as an announcer. You are in a storied history of announcers. I think back to, Red Barber, one of the most colorful speaking announcers, starting out with you guys. And what was it? There used to be something on NPR years ago. I cannot remember the guy. He did an interview with Red Barber every Friday, and they would talk stories about Red living up in Tallahassee and taking care of his flowers, he and the missus and all that. But and one of the things I remember them talking to him about was the language. He said he never cursed in private, so he wouldn't curse in public. But he'd say things like, "Oh, doctor," or well, I'll be a suck egg mule.
Yeah, I mean, he had that southern charm, the southern expressions. I used to not to compare him at all, but when I was doing basketball, I had an analyst who was from the South, and he would always come up with phrases like that. He'd make me laugh. Like he'd say like, that guy hit. What did he say? He used to say something like that guy slid along the floor like a fat kid in corduroys or something. So you'd listen to these funny sayings from people that they just heard when they're growing up. I mean, I heard them too in the East, and anything I might say is a lot more subtle than what they would say. But the old doctor stuff, they were so famous in terms of those lines. And even stuff that Vin said, referring to the baseball as a she, she is gone. Like, you really have to be careful to not say the things that people who came before you said, so they don't think you're ripping them off or something. But the only thing that I'll say that Vin said is, if there's 2 outs, 2 on, and it's a 2-2 count, but I'll give him credit. I'll say, deuce is wild, as the master would say. And you might hear me say that from time to time. I don't say it and then not give him credit. I've heard others do that, but being in the Dodger booth, I've got to give him credit for sure. But yeah, there's a lot of funny sayings, but Red Barber had some, and he's, his picture hangs in the wall behind the broadcast booths, along with a lot of the other, or actually every other broadcaster that the Dodgers have ever had. And it's neat, though, the history when you look at it, because it was Red that hired Vin when Vin was 20-something out of Fordham. I think he might have just graduated from Fordham. And Vin had written to Red Barber before and told him what he wanted to do, and timing worked out. He said, "Okay, I'm going to send you over to Fenway Park, and you're going to do what was it? I want to say it was Maryland and Boston University in football, something like that. You're going to go do a football game." And it was freezing cold, and Vin left his coat back at the hotel. So he got to Fenway, and this game was on national radio. And Red had hired Vin to do this because he was in charge of it from New York. And so here's a 20-something-year-old kid out of Fordham. He's calling this football game from the roof of Fenway Park, freezing the whole time. And not once did he ever complain about the weather, that he was cold, that he forgot his coat, nothing. And that impressed Red Barber so much that he said, why don't you come out to Brooklyn and let's see how you do on the Dodgers?
Wow.
And started giving him some innings. And so that's how it all started. And, I've heard Vin tell the story, and it's just remarkable. I remember when I was with the Red Sox and we came in 2016, we found the old program cover of that game between Maryland and Boston University, and had it all framed and done up. And our general manager at the time, Dave Dombrowski, went in there and presented it to him. And it was a really neat gift based on that story that Vin told, and how he got connected to Red Barber and how he worked for Red at first doing college football and then turned into the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Wow. I mean, you are established yourself in your own right, but I say it many times, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. And it must be, I mean, it's like you walk into a Hall of Fame of announcers just coming in to be a part of the Dodgers organization, I would think. But you're very diverse yourself. I mean, it isn't just baseball. You've called a lot of other things as well. What are some of the other things that have been on your plate?
I've done a lot of college football, a lot of basketball, hockey, done a lot of hockey, pro hockey and college hockey, which I'll probably do at some level again next off season, I think. Did 4 different Olympics, 2 winter, 2 summer, and did men's and women's basketball, baseball, softball in the summer. And in the winter, did men's and women's ice hockey. And then a couple of ones I'd never done before. I did 120-meter long hill ski jumping.
Oh, wow.
Which was fun. I actually enjoyed it. I also did women's aerials competition, which I had never done before. I got thrown in at the last minute and had to learn it on the fly, and did not have an analyst. Had to do it. I had 24 hours notice, but that was nothing though compared to 2004 in Athens, Greece. I had 10 minutes notice before I had to do Iraq and Portugal in soccer. The announcer got caught in traffic. They couldn't find anybody else. I happened to be in a research area of the International Broadcast Center. Our executive producer was from Auckland, New Zealand, and he ran in and he said, "Have you ever done football?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And then before I could finish the sentence, I realized what he was talking about. And I really hadn't done any soccer at that point. I think I might have done a high school soccer match at one time. Really didn't play the game, didn't really know the rules. And so before I could finish the sentence, I realized he means soccer because a couple of days before the opening ceremonies, the soccer tournament always starts in the Olympics. So this was on a Wednesday. And I'm in there researching baseball. And he goes, "Good, because in 10 minutes, you're going to do Iraq and Portugal." He goes, and I said, "It doesn't bother you that everybody in the 110 countries that's going to be watching this knows more about the game than I do?" He goes, "Nope, you speak English, you're under contract, and you're present." He goes, "You have to do it." He goes, "I'm sorry." And he sent out another announcer to give me a tutorial on who was who, which I forgot most of anyway. And it went into what's called an off-tube booth, which is just a booth off-site, and had to call the game off of screens. I had no analyst. And so I followed the rundown. This is television, right? So I followed the rundown. Here we are. Here's a locator graphic. We're in the Peloponnese. Here's the stadium. We got Iraq. We got Portugal. It's going to be amazing, right? Now I don't know what to say after that. I figured I could follow the format and the graphics and everything, and I was fine. And then the game starts, and then there's a whistle. And they don't talk to you in your ear, the producers. They don't talk to you like they do here in the States. They just let you go the whole game. Ooh. So there's a whistle. I don't know. I don't recognize why. And then they realize I don't recognize why. So a guy gets in my ear with this New Zealand accent, and he goes, "That's offside, mate." And I said, "That's offside." And then that's how I learned what offside was in soccer. So it was the most difficult 90 minutes of my broadcasting career, but they were very appreciative that I sat there and took one for the team. I didn't really have a choice though. But I remembered the one thing that saved me was that on my flight over, I had a connection in Munich. And so I get on the plane in Munich, and this is before 9/11. Anybody could get on. This is 2000. Oh, you know what? It was after that. So in Munich, they let the Portuguese media on the plane. So there's all kinds of television cameras coming down the aisle. And I'm like, who's this? And all these guys are in these maroon blazers with the logo patch on it. And one guy, I'm like, all right, I do recognize that guy. And it was Ronaldo.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so they're on my commercial. The Portuguese national team's on my commercial flight. And then we land in Athens and around bag claim, and they had to all get their own bags. This is Olympic sports, not pro sport. So he's there. I'm at the same baggage terminal or baggage carousel. And so I use that as a story during the match and watching Ronaldo play, and the fact that they, whatever. That's a story I use because I happened to witness it. But that was the best story I had, probably the only story I had in the entire game. So, but that was Olympic stuff, and I've done other things. I've done swimming and diving. I've done track and field, things like that. I really enjoy doing track and field. I wish I'd do that more, but but baseball is, I consider baseball kind of an art form, and I really enjoy it. I've been really lucky because I've been able to go back and forth in both the TV and radio booths for the Dodgers, where many people have not done that. Very few, as a matter of fact, have done that. And it's a different job when you're on TV. It's different. When you do radio, you're painting the picture. Nothing happens until you say it does. Where TV, you've got to caption pictures and set up your analysts. And we've got great analysts we get to work with, Oral Hershiser, Nomar Garciaparra, Eric Karros. I mean, we've got some really great old Dodgers that are with us. And of course, on radio, I get to work with the greatest, and Rick Monday, who is the most prepared analyst I've ever worked with. Absolutely hilarious. He's got such a great sense of humor, and we have great conversations off the air and tons of laughs, and we get along real well. He called me a couple days ago just to check in and give me a hard time about something, but he's just funny, and we all get along real well, so that helps.
Makes a big difference if you got a camaraderie. You can feel. I see in the past, in most cases, there's a good combination between the announcers, but occasionally you'll see they just pull these guys in from somewhere else. They've never met one another. That may not be the case, but if you can feel a friendliness between them, a shared interest in the game, and almost a subliminal communication between announcers, fans appreciate that. They get that part of it. So thanks to you, Tim, for doing that, and you and the rest of the team as well, because it means something. I always look at what's happening with some of the different announcers during the game. Also, those, like you said, Earl Hershiser or others who've actually been in the game. And I like the comparison. I believe both of those people, whether they're a player or not, appreciate the game. And I sometimes feel like the person who's not the former player has a fan perspective that the player may not, and the player can come in and give a perspective on what kind of pitch was just thrown, or kudos to you and your team there, my friend. Glad to see you're all doing so well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. We all get along very well. That includes the guys on the Spanish side too. I mean, we see, we're lucky. We see Fernando Valenzuela all the time. And when you're in that, lack of a better term, inner circle, but when you're there every day with him, he's a real joker. Like that people may not realize what a prankster he is and what a funny guy he is. But if you've known him for a while, I've known him for a long while because, believe it or not, I used to call college baseball in Las Vegas when his son, Fernando Jr., was playing at UNLV. And that was when I had first met Fernando years and years ago. But to be around him all the time, and to have been around Jaime Jarrín, his son Jorge too. But Jaime does come around every once in a while. There's another Hall of Famer, one of the great guys of all time. He has us over to his house for dinner in spring training. and it's just like story after story after story. It's just wonderful. Pepe Iniguez, and of course Jose Mota. I've known his dad for a while, but known Jose a long time from his time with the Angels. Just one of the great guys in the game, and we get to travel with him. In fact, I probably sit on the plane with Jose more than I do anybody else. And then Jose will take off every once in a while. He'll go up and check out what's happening in the cockpit because he likes aviation. And Rick Monday does too, by the way. Because Rick is a pilot. People may not know that, but he's been a pilot for a long time.
Wow.
So he gets to know all of our pilots very well and goes up in the cockpit. But we have a really good crew, and we all get along pretty well.
Well, let me ask you now, kind of coming back to the Dodgers in 2024 and spring training coming up. What do you do to prepare for this upcoming season? What kind of homework are you doing and thinking ahead to the season?
One of the things that I'm doing and have been doing for several weeks now and continuing to do until I get there is going through each team's 40-man rosters. Actually, when we get off our call, I have a call with our farm director with the Dodgers, and we'll talk about the guys that they're planning on using and bringing over from minor league camp, the guys they want to see get a look in the big league exhibition games. Some of the just in case guys, the pitchers, we call them JICs, J-I-C. The JIC guys will come over from minor league camp and sit in the bullpen. And if the game gets out of hand, well, they're there just in case. So they come in and pitch. So we have to be ready for those guys too, because if number 99 with no name on his back comes out of the bullpen, we got to know who it is.
Yeah.
So we spend time. I actually have one of my sons help me create a database each year and update it, and we're working on that as we speak, and getting pretty far along with it. So we get everybody, and then what happens is inevitably there's a trade or an acquisition, and I'll go back in the database, and like the White Sox just made a deal with the Mariners the other day, so I'll go back and I'll switch the guys around and put them on the right teams. And so when they, when we play them, I have all the information handy and ready to go, but I'll also have gone over it ahead of time, and we'll have a familiarity, especially on the pitchers that are going to be used. We'll get a little tip off on which pitchers are going to be used the next day. I know where to look in the clubhouse for that. So I'll find out, okay, tomorrow it's so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. I'll take a little picture if I don't have time to write it down. And then after that game, I can prepare for the pitchers the next day. So there's a lot more, like in spring training, because you're not playing the same team 3 or 4 days in a row like you do during the regular season.
Right.
You're playing a new team every day. So when our games are done, it's right back to the drawing board, and you're working at night and first thing in the morning. And then you get over there and you do your routine. You go talk to the manager or go out in the backfields, talk to some players, coaches, whatever. And then you're back at it again. So it's actually a lot more work in spring training to prepare for a game than it is a regular season game. And because you have so many more players playing in the spring games, first couple of days, we'll have probably 25 to 26 players a team, maybe. So 50 to 52 players will get into a game.
Wow.
The first few games, usually that's how it works. Jeez. And then you know ahead of time. I get tipped off ahead of time. I have an arrangement with somebody who tells me how many at bats they're going to have today, the starters, who's coming in at certain positions right afterwards, so that you're not out there in the fifth inning going, oh, who's the third? Who's the second? Who's the short? Oh gosh, you got to write it down. Commercial coming back, come back. So I know I try to as best I can to know ahead of time, rather than try to guess.
Yeah. That's the third guy's a day in right field at 8 Mookie.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, man, that's a lot of prep, but I got to tell you what, you guys know your stuff when it comes across. We're talking with Tim Neverett. He is indeed the announcer for both radio and TV with the Dodgers. And Tim, we talked before about your book, COVID Curveball, on your last visit. Is that still in circulation?
It is, actually. Yeah. I just had a request the other day from somebody that got it on Amazon, but it's still out there. typically right now, I would just say Amazon's the best place to find it, or wherever books are sold online. Occasionally, you're going to run into it in a bookstore somewhere. But I had a lot of them where I was signing them, custom inscriptions, and then would ship them out. And we had Oral sign, because Oral Hershiser did the forward for it. He signed a large group of them as well.
Wow.
But we're just we put that to bed. But the book is still out there, and I know I've seen it on Amazon recently, but that's where I'd probably start.
All right. Yeah, I've found myself more and more buying ebooks. I like the feel, though, of the heft of having a book of paper in my hand. Guys, if you haven't seen this book, check it out again. It's Tim Neverett. He's the author of COVID Curveball, and I enjoyed every page that turned in that book. It's great. It's entertaining, and it's fun. And I think you've got a season in front of you. It may not be as eventful as far as the surroundings, the team, the fans. This season's going to explode for the Dodgers. I have no doubt.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I mean, I think when you look at the division, you say, okay, who's going to battle them for the division? I think the Diamondbacks will. I think the Diamondbacks actually improved, believe it or not, with some additions they made. I don't know if the Giants are going to be there. I don't know if, where the Padres fit in, and the Rockies, unfortunately, we all know where they're going to fit in.
Yeah.
It's too bad for them, because they've got a great market, a great ballpark, but they just have not been able to figure it out. And they'll win a few games here and there, but they're not, they might be looking at another 100-loss season. But as far as the Dodgers are concerned, I think, they should win the division. I would feel comfortable saying that they should win the division. It's going to be a good battle when they play the Diamondbacks now, I think, and the Padres too. Giants are going to, it's always a fun game when they play the Giants. But then after that, again, you get down to the postseason. Who's healthy? Who's playing well? Who's hitting? Who's hot? Who's pitching well? And who's got the hot arm out of the bullpen? So there's a lot of stories to be written between now and then. There really are.
All right. Well, Tim, I can't thank you enough again for joining us here on Baseball Biz on Deck. I'm Mark Carbage, your host. And if you want to know anything about baseball, you can start here. Follow Tim. Listen to him. You can find him on that. Where can they find you on social media, Tim?
Just on Twitter, or I guess it's called X now, but Twitter. Everybody still calls it Twitter. That's one place. Instagram, Facebook, just under my name, Tim Neverett. Those are the places to find where I am. And again, the book's available on Amazon. The audio, I forgot about the audiobook. The audiobook also on Audible. You can get that through Amazon and Audible as well. If you don't want to feel the pages, you want to just listen to it on your commute or whatever, the audiobook's available too.
All right. Well, thank you again, Tim. I appreciate you being on the show today, my friend.
Okay. Anytime, Mark. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Baseball Biz. That was Mr. Tim Neverett, who's the announcer for the Dodgers and also author of COVID Curveball. Hope you've enjoyed the show. If you have, go ahead and make sure you like us, subscribe to us, review us, whatever. You can always reach us at Twitter at @TheBaseballBiz, and you can find Baseball Biz on podcast directory everywhere, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify. We're everywhere. Well, we look forward to talking to you guys again real soon. Special thanks to X-Tech RUX for the music rocking forward.